So we're going to combine my two topics. So I was going to talk about time management and productivity this morning off the back of Adele's fabulous talk. But what I'd like to do is be able to bundle them both together in a fairly quick overview. For those of you who'd like to see the detailed time management and productivity speech that I'm going to do a little bit of now, we'll put some details up later on. I'm actually doing a whole workshop with Brisbane City Council on this topic in only a few weeks' time. So really great way to be able to give you more insight and give you a chance to actually do the work, which is the most important part. But let's get underway. So for those of you who've been following Growy for a little while, you may have seen the Growy map before. It's a tool we use to help people understand all the complexity of different business decisions you might need to make. And so this session is really going to be looking at your strategic use of time. And I'm very specific about strategy, because if you're not thinking at a much higher level, it's really difficult to make good decisions within the right context. And it's also obviously about you, yourself. That's the bottom left red corner. Everything about your business is driven by your assumptions about yourself, who you are as a leader, and how you show up every day. So your standards, your processes, your emotional weight that you leave, that we heard a little bit from in the conversation with Adele this morning, all of those things influence your choices. And so taking a moment to pause, which we should all do a little bit of this before we get started. Thanks, Sue. Because I think that it's really important to reflect on reality. And that's at its fundamental, understanding where we're coming from, what our headspace is, and our innate reactions to stress, and how we respond inevitably about the way we show up is how we think about time. And ultimately, that's at the heart of the way that you're packing your diary and the way that you prioritize where your effort goes. So this is some really simple tips, and I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, but there's something I'd like you to think about before we get started. And that's one of the things when we were talking about the sage brain earlier, about being able to navigate towards your purpose. So understanding why you are doing what you're doing is a really important foundation, and it's going to help you make all the key decisions in your life about where you choose to put your effort and where you might choose to find those things that you want to put in the jar first. So if you haven't heard of this analogy, sometimes it ends up with a beer, but work with me here for a sec. So the jar on the left, they've put the sand in first. And for a lot of people, the sand is the busy work that you do. So if you think about your calendar as a jar, we often allow emails, social media particularly, a lot of these distractible tools to take our time. And the only thing we have as a resource that everyone shares is time. We can't get it back. And so how you choose to use that's really critical. So big rocks in first. If you stick the big rocks in the jar first, and the big rock choice comes down to your values and your purpose. So if your values are family, love, companionship, caring, health, fitness, we need to make sure that your diary is reflecting those big rocks before everything else. So I'm one of those people who plans their holidays once a year. I like to have holidays planned in advance, although there's a fair amount of conflict in my family because my sister's family like to do things last minute. So we don't often get to have family holidays together. And the challenge with that is that if you are a planner, and this is not really a choice, it's just remembering that if you do choose to plan, you are actually giving yourself the opportunity of creating more time for yourself. So I would highly recommend that everyone does this at least as a plan. So putting your big rocks in first, knocking out your holidays, making sure you're mapping your week, working out those sort of inherent really structures of your week and your time. Then you can build the sand around it. And then the story goes that at the end of the week, you can always have space for a beer because liquid will go into the sand. So there's lots of room always for a drink to celebrate your week's success. So big rocks in first is really important in terms of time management. The other thing that's really critical is thinking about things on a much higher level. And so this framework is really simple. And with this one question, it can make a massive difference to you and the way you think about your business and your life, really. This applies to both realms. And as we all know, you can't be one without the other. So if you're thinking about your one thing for someday, what's the one thing that you might like to achieve in your life? And there's always that question of when you're at your funeral, what would you want people to be saying about you? What kind of legacy would you like to be leaving for your family and for your friends? That's your kind of one thing for your life. But if we look at things today, because our horizons are shrinking, if nothing else, COVID has taught us that we can't think 3 years out. It's a bit hard, but thinking a year out or 3 months out is much easier. So if we brought back our dominoes from someday, 1 year, 10 years, 15, 50 years, back down to 3 and back down to 1, and we ask ourselves the question now, given everything that's going on in your world, what's the one thing I can do right now such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Now, this question works for any time horizon. But the most important thing about it is it forces you to think about all of the unnecessary and hard things that you add into your life because you think you should. Now, shoulds are a difficult word. Generally, they're an intention coming from somebody else or an assumption you've made about expectations you place on yourself. And so when we think about things, doing it so that everything else will be easier or unnecessary, this kind of question for me prompted me to think, well, actually, I spend a lot of time in meetings. I spend a lot of time helping other people drive their business. How would that be easier or unnecessary? And the way that it's easier or unnecessary is that I build a software platform that has nothing to do with me sitting in meetings and leverages my IP. That suddenly makes my life much easier and all those meetings quite unnecessary. Obviously, I'm going to have different meetings for different reasons, but the higher level purpose changes dramatically. So that's why if you can think about something, and we were talking about Dinah's business earlier, is that her biggest challenge as a dressmaker making boutique wedding dresses was that she could only do 10 to 15 measure ups a week physically herself. Now, doing that online and building a tool that she can email to people has meant that she can do 20 or more measure ups a week because they do the measuring in a specific way she's taught them. So that suddenly makes that much easier. So if you think about all of the challenges in your business that make you feel really frustrated, what is the one thing that you can do such by doing that it suddenly becomes much more easy or actually unnecessary? So things like find a PA, outsource some marketing. Suddenly, all of those things become temporarily trickier, but ultimately much easier. So it's a really great way of considering how to look at where that sits within the decisions you make in your world. So part of that then, and this is about choosing about things that make life easier and unnecessary, is that each of us have a core strength that is our highest value activity. So this is the thing that only you can do in your business, and everybody has something. It's the strength that you bring. It's the lane of genius I heard earlier that is actually your specific lane of genius, that your unique talents and expertise and experience and character have formed within you and allow you an unique view on the world. Now, I know I can guarantee that I am not a bookkeeper or an accountant, and I'm happy, very happy to outsource my financials and know that that's not my highest value add. However, on the other flip side of that, I'm also a neurotic ex-designer. And so poor Tara has to put up with me redesigning every PowerPoint slide. Now, that's not my specific lane of genius. Yes, I can outsource to a graphic designer, but I enjoy it. And I'm also slightly OCD, so I can't help myself. But at some point, I'm going to have to expect that I have to let go of that because really it's not the highest value use of my time. The highest value use of my time is in my IP, in some of my facilitation skills, my ability to ask good questions, my ability to build good relationships. Hard to outsource that stuff. So this is where it's really important for you to make some pretty brutal decisions. If you could only do one thing, remember, one thing is a focus question. If you could only do one thing, of course you'd want to be doing the thing that was the highest value use of your time and that you can only uniquely contribute, in which case, how do you get the rest of the other stuff done? So one of the big challenges with strategic choices is actually getting to a focus level. And everyone says in a small business, well, I have to do everything. I can't afford to employ lots of people. All my jobs sit within my experience. Well, my challenge to you is, and so what if you didn't? How else could you do that? Because I think that if we're going to break the cycle, and today is very much about trying to help businesses go from being a smaller turnover where everything sits on your shoulders to being a structured business where you have staff who take on these responsibilities. At some point, if you have that as a goal, you have to let go of the fact, like I do, that somebody else will do it differently to you. And it's going to have to cost you a small amount of money or a small amount of time to upskill them and bring them on board. In which case, which is the first thing that makes it easy. And now, luckily, we have an amazing marketplace full of really good, supportive co-working outsourcers who can do a variety of different things for us in our world. And so through tools like Upwork and Fiverr and a variety of online marketplaces, you can find specialists who are donating their time with their highest value work contribution for you for not a lot of money. Which means that sometimes you have to get used to paying for stuff as opposed to doing it yourself. But actually, if you can create a network of people around you who are experts in their field, then that will enable you the more time to do the stuff you're really good at. And inevitably, it's going to be building sales. So if we can give you an extra day a week back from being a good planner, plus understanding where your highest value time is, then actually what you need to be doing is spending the time building the value of your business using your highest value expertise during that period of time so that you can afford your suite of contractors who are going to give you a hand. One of the ways you can do that is by time blocking. So this is just a quick tip in terms of how you might choose to use your diary. One of the things that we often do, particularly if we're talking about sales, unfortunately, sales fixes everything in your business. The more sales you have, the more revenue you have, happier owners. Ultimately, there's got to be some profit attached to that, assuming you're pricing properly. So let's just assume that your best value is actually in relationship building and selling yourself. People will buy you because you're fabulous. So therefore, how are you going to get those sales into your diary? Now, we all know, well, at some level, you must understand that sales is tracked by meetings. I have lots of meetings. My calendar is full of them. But it was an epiphany for me for a few months ago to say, well, actually, it's not useful having just looking back at my diary and saying, oh, I had one sales meeting this month. Yay, good me. My future self did not like that very much because I'd booked no other meetings for the future. I can't change what I've done historically. I can only change what the past looks like. So if you are booking meetings in your diary in advance and saying, I need 4 sales meetings a week, I'm going to block those meetings in my diary right now. I don't know who I'm meeting with yet, but I know I have to do the work to fill them up. And if you do that, then that actually allows you to put your big rocks in first. Sales, really important. And if you get to the beginning of a week before and you look at next week's diary and realize that they're all empty, you don't actually have anyone booked in, then you've got to scramble to find someone to meet with because relationships matter. Now, they don't have to be a direct sale. They can be someone who can refer you in. But I just want you to think about the idea of planning your activity in advance to make sure that those big rocks are put into your diary in advance. Now, all of the other busy work can fit around the big rocks, but the big rocks can never move. So I want you to think about that. In the same way we wouldn't want to book a holiday and then change it about 5 times, although COVID's made us do that. We don't want to move our big rocks because they're the things that are going to help us achieve our goals for our business. So here's my final tip about planning in terms of time management. Now, this is really tough when you're not used to doing it because it is a habit. And as we know, habits are actually the things that mean that you're working on autopilot. And so there's much better chance of you actually enabling yourself to be effective. So this is a habit. Plan your year once, plan your quarter once, just for that quarter, plan your month once, plan your week once, and then plan your day daily. It's the easiest way to make sure that you're getting more time back and you're only doing it once. One of the things that we often do is we find ourselves redoing it all the time. We plan our week every couple of days. No, just plan it once. Plan it once for the week in advance, not the week you're in the middle of. It's too close. You can't book a meeting with someone tomorrow. It's really unusual, although meeting on Zoom has made that better. Inevitably, what you want to try and do is be booking in advance. So for those really key things that you absolutely need to do, please do that. So that would be my final tip in terms of time management. However, there is another bit of time that I'd like you to block in and make a rock and a big rock as part of your life. And I'll get to that in a sec. So here's some really great tools if you're really keen on productivity. If you're wanting to build some good habits, then Streaks is a great app to help you do that. It's gamifying your future self to make sure you feel happy when you've achieved something, if you like ticking off lists. The other thing that's worth reading is James Clear's book on habits. It's an excellent undertaking to explain to you why some habits you have are good for you and why some habits are not. Like my version of reading the Facebook pages just before I go to sleep. That is not a good habit, something I have to try and break. This one is absolutely a good habit. And so I hope you take them away from Adele today. But more ways about how you can make habits work for you in James's book. Highly recommend it. All right, we've got 20 minutes to cover some strategy. Now, for those of you who know this is one of my favorite topics, and this is important for any size business. And you would have heard me rabbiting on, I'm sure, about one-page business planning. I'm going to give you that tool so that you can all do that for yourself. But first, I need you to understand, because strategy sounds scary for a lot of people, think about it as just making key decisions. So all we want to try and do is giving you the tools to make the best decisions with the information you have today for you and your business. So let's just talk you through some of those decisions you have to make. The first one is, as I said earlier, projecting forward. Strategy is all about thinking about different horizons. So we've got the 3-year horizon being something you can see in the distance. We've got the 1-year horizon as the hills, the foothills at the bottom of that big mountain. And then the next 90 days is the path you're on currently. Now, the good news about this is you can change your path. The mountains are kind of in the distance. We can get there from lots of different paths. And that's the whole point of this process, is actually to reassess regularly. So the businesses that were able to do something differently, like we heard earlier from Zoe, were the businesses who were thinking about their company on a regular basis. They are reassessing the landscape. They're thinking about what's going on in the world, and they've got their customer firmly in their sights as to the way that they want to serve them. And with those 2 bits of information, what's going on in the world, what does my customer really want, they're the things that you really need to understand about what's going to drive your business and help you make good decisions. The other bit of it is understanding the facts of what your reality is. So for those of you who don't find numbers very friendly, this is a good opportunity for you to, at least on a regular basis, assess the numbers as to how your business is performing. Just last night, I don't know why I decided last night was a good time to do it. I sat down, oh, you can't see, sorry, really dodgy bit of analysis there, but that's as good as it needs to be. It's just a 1-pager, all your clients, how much they're earning, you're earning, how much productivity is attached to delivering on them, what's the net profit attached to each of your clients, if you're selling hours or time or products, same thing. Which products are giving you the best return, which clients are giving you the best return, and if we had more of those, how would we find them, and which clients do we might have to say no to. So you need to have all of that understanding of what the reality for your world looks like internally, as well as the reality for the external world. So first, though, it's important to have a goal. So even if we're looking at a 90-day horizon, all of us have something we'd like to have different in our business in the next time period. So what I'd like you to do now is find some paper and write down what would be the most important thing. Remember that, like the one thing, even if you said the one thing that I'd like to be doing differently in my business in the next 90 days. So we're sitting just before or just after Christmas at the moment. We're on the horizon of Christmas looming at us. For those of us in the hospitality and travel industry, we're all saying, yes, please bring us tourists in Queensland. Maybe they'll be able to get through across the border. But if you're thinking about the next 90 days, that's where we're looking, sort of sometime mid-January. So in that period of time, what would you like your business to be doing? Is there anything you'd like to change about it? If you'd like to set yourself a stretch goal, what would that be? And it may be just as simple as something of, I'd like to improve this part of my business. Or from something you've learned today, like I'd like to do testing of some different media channel, social media, sales channels, diary management, one thing. Could be a habit, could be a target, could be a process in your business, could be employing some staff, could be increasing your value in terms of your productivity. And I want to make sure that when you write your goal down that you've got a measure of success attached to that. So how would you determine, if we were sitting here in mid-January, that it was done or not done? It's really, really important that you can have a black and white decision about what that looks like. So with that goal in mind, I just want to take you through some key questions you can ask yourself to be able to put the plan together to achieve that goal. A lot of the times we make mistakes when it comes to strategy by deciding that the goal is the plan. And they are 2 different things. Remember, all we're doing is setting the goal for a horizon. We have to decide on what the path is to get there. So there's lots of different paths you can choose. So we have to choose the right path to match the goal. So how do we do that? Strategic planning, as I said, is all about 4 questions. So how do we reinforce our core? If we go back to the growing map, you'll have ability to download all of these things off our site. You'll find that the core is about our values, ourself as the leader, our purpose is our business, why we decided to do this company, and what our values are. Now, those things are often unconscious decisions, especially if we're early days in our business, but they're really all important ones because they mostly don't change. We can change our customer, but the others are generally fairly fixed based on who we are and what's important to us. So we need to make sure that we're remembering that we have a core and that those things are foundational to our business. Generally, 1.0 is where our cash is coming from. If we've started our business and that's where what's generating our cash is our oxygen, it's what keeps us going. So we need to remember that if we're starting anything new, we can't take our eye off the ball of the thing that made us the money in the first place. So we have to make sure, and this happens a lot with strategy, but with particularly entrepreneurs who like bright, flashy lights and all sorts of new things rather than doing the old stuff, we have to remember that the cash is important. Otherwise, we can't afford to do anything new. So how do we do more of what we're currently doing? We still have to make sure we're covering that one off. The second thing is what can we improve? So continuous improvement is really important to keep businesses live and living. It helps our customers experience a better contribution from us and gets overall a better outcome for our business. It helps us be better, cheaper, faster. So that's a really important question. Most people think strategy is all about growth. In fact, it doesn't have to be. I'd rather see you grow your profits than grow your top line. If you've got limited resources, think about how you can be more profitable than thinking about growing, because growing costs money. You can see on this map, we've got time on the bottom and we've got money on the left-hand axis. And basically everything decision you make to grow your business or to change it is going to take time and money. So improving it is the fastest way to return extra cash back into your core. And it's also going to be, but it's going to deliver a smaller amount of cash, obviously, because the improvements that you make are only going to generate smaller amounts of information, of return back to the business, whether it's time or money. So then, of course, we need to have some growth. Ideally, growth processes take some time to generate cash. So whether it's a new relationship, a new alliance, a social media strategy, all of those things take time to return the cash back to the business. That will be much faster if you just do some improvements. But if you want growth, you need to plan out a little bit further in advance. And some growth projects can take a long time. But those of us in business to business relationships, you'll know that it can take 6 to 12 months to be able to convert a business relationship into some.
Amanda, I think we're dropping you out a bit here.
Who's a paying customer. So
Amanda?
That's why planning is important.
Sorry.
Yes, I just realised my internet died.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to make that point again.
Sure. I just want to say, so just about growth, really important that you've got some growth in your business, because even if you choose not to grow right now, remember the lag of the cash coming back into your company will take some time. So we always want to be doing at least one growth activity, because it will cost a little bit to grow. Like Helen was just saying, to introduce a new product line or a new box of cheese, that costs money to build those relationships. Oh, it's typical. My internet's dying in the middle of my presentation. All right, so last one is the blue sky stuff. So that's what Christine was talking about in terms of innovation this morning. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on that. It's very difficult to do a blue sky decision in 90 days, but it is something I want you to think about. So at least once a year, again, to that annual planning, very important to be thinking about your business from a longer term planning perspective, either as an exit strategy or some other way of looking towards innovation. Am I back? Am I back? Am I back? All right, the other important factor, as I mentioned earlier, is looking at the landscape. You can't just look at your business in isolation. There's all sorts of things going on externally. So it's worthwhile being in touch with your competitors, with your clients, getting feedback from them and understanding really where the market might be going in your industry. If there's one thing that's COVID shown,
maybe drop your camera off for a bit, see if that helps.
Everybody. All right. Okay. Can you hear me? I can see Tara moving, so that's a good sign. So this is the question. What's the one thing that you could complete in the next 90 days that would take you closest to your goal? So this is again about prioritizing a focus question. So out of all of the things you could possibly think of that would get you there, out of that list, which is the thing that's that you've got the resources to deliver on, that you've got the time and money to invest in, and that's actually going to generate the outcome you're looking for in the next 90 days. So I'd like you to have a think about that. But what we've got is a 90-day plan. So this is an opportunity for you to do a summary of all the different things that you might be reviewing, and a place for you to keep some thoughts and a process that you can use every 90 days to be able to drive your replanning. So you need to put the date on it. You need to decide the date of when you're going to finish. I'd like everyone to be thinking about a core thing. So something that improves you and the business. As a leader or a manager, might be getting clear on your purpose. Something that might improve the business, something that will grow the business, and maybe something that you might want to work towards that blue sky outcome in terms of the longer term plan. And ideally, we want to have measures of success for each of those so that you can know whether it's done or not done and whether that's been useful for you within your business. And then finally, who's going to do it? And for most of us in small businesses, that will be your name in every box. But the more that I can recommend that you find somebody else to help you out, outsourcing small amounts of it, the better chance you have of getting most of it finished. So as I mentioned earlier, here's another process for your big rocks. I really would like to see every small business have this kind of a process. It sits with what big businesses do, and there's no reason as a small business we can't do the same thing. So we've talked already about the 90-day planning routine. We've talked about having those weekly and quarterly review processes so that you plan your quarter once, you plan your week once, you plan your day once, you can have a daily huddle with yourself. But the most important one is doing that annual planning where you actually look at all the different elements of your business and pull them together into just a one-page plan is fine. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. This is best practice across the board, and it's the way that most businesses have been able to change their businesses so quickly because they're doing this kind of routine regularly for themselves. If you've got an accountant, it's really a good opportunity for you to make a regular time to see them, and certainly do this monthly review of your business, look at your financials, make sure that you're on track, look at what's profitable, look at what you could potentially stop doing, all of those conversations, even if it's only an hour and you put that in your diary now, it's really important for longer term success. It's the most important meetings that you should be having with yourself to make sure your business is successful. Okay, so if you want some more questions to ask yourself about strategy, we actually have a pack of a whole pile of questions. There's 50 of them for small business success. We will post the link for all of those questions on growy.us. And so you'll be able to find out some of those other questions that might prompt you a bit to take you out of your comfort zone and think about your business in a different way. So happy to give you those questions. And you can see they're color-coded related to the 4 different questions that you need to ask yourself. And they just might help to make some of those decisions or at least think about things differently. You can download these free tools to be able to help you do your own planning. We've got the black and white version of the map plus the one-page plan and the 90-day plan, and we'll post all of those on growy.us.